Hello, my brother. Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. You know, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been beating the drum pretty hard about fortifying your inner foundation during times of change. I borrowed from the wisdom of Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, where he says, when we cannot change our environment, we are challenged to change ourselves, right? And Viktor Frankl survived 3 years in concentration camps where he had absolutely no control, no power over the world that he was living in, but he did have the choice to choose what attitude he was going to bring, whether or not he was going to stay connected to hope. And thank God that he did, because his work has helped to stabilize and heal and inspire millions of people in the decades that have followed. And so over the last 4 or 5 weeks, I felt really inspired and connected to that vision, to his guidance and leadership. And I've been on a pretty big roll over these past 4.5 weeks, internally speaking. But I haven't really shared much about what happens when you feel the dip in motivation. And that hit me pretty hard this weekend on Saturday, which is typically my day for restoration, for rejuvenation. I take the entire day out to just shut out from the outside world during this quarantine era, because Monday through Friday, I'm really supporting a lot of people. I'm really in high creation mode. I'm really doing a lot of coaching calls and lending support to people who I care about, who need some stabilizing. So Saturday is typically my day for me to go inward and rejuvenate, and I've found it to be quite nourishing over the past 4 weeks. But this Saturday, I hit a major dip in my energy. I felt like a sloth. There was very little motivation to do really anything for myself. My long form meditations that I've been doing, like 3 to 6 hour meditations on Saturdays just for myself, I felt no inspiration. I felt very little connection to my power source. I was really drained. And on Sunday, I felt pretty much the same. There was very little energy or motivation. And Monday, I felt a bit of an uptick, but I was still kind of walking around with just a fraction of the power or the inspiration or motivation that I typically feel. And what I actually found this week was I'm not the only one. There are a number of men and leaders who I've been working with who have also experienced a similar dip at the same time. Yesterday, a few of the anchors in the Great Man Mastermind, we have a group chat amongst the anchors. And these anchors are a handful of men who are leaders inside of this group who have done work with me before. There are 3 anchors, and then there's Brian Stacy, who's obviously my podcast partner here. And one of the men in the group, Mark, who's like one of the most inspiring, giving, intentional men that I know on this fucking planet. Just a deep reservoir of creation, of giving. And he's a lawyer by day, but also like a deep practitioner of meditation, of yoga. He teaches the men in our group about this stuff. One of the things that Mark shared in our group last night was, hey guys, scale of 1 to 10, I'm feeling like a 1.5 in terms of motivation to get the stuff done that I'm supposed to get done. I'm working on a big merger at work, and I'm getting it done, but like my motivation's not there. And I'm, kind of trying to play with, what do I do? Do I just forge ahead and power through? Or, do I play with this concept of cultivating some intentional laziness where I actually am not even meditating, maybe just sitting down and doing nothing, not asking myself to complete a task, not doing breathwork exercise, not working out, not meditating, not doing a journal entry, just like actually sitting down and maybe watching an episode of Westworld. I didn't know, Mark, that you were a fan of Westworld, brother, because I am current on that show and it is fucking tremendous this season. But like one of the questions that Michael Young, who is another one of the anchors in the mastermind and just a rock of steadiness and like wisdom, deep wisdom of calm. And this man has already retired from working a 30-year corporate career on his own terms and has put 3 kids through college and has like saved money and done it the right way. So now he's a coach for other high-performing leaders. And, Michael said he experienced something similar. And he was like, one of the things that I did during that period of time was I started going back to old photo albums that brought me joy and flipped through some pictures from years ago. He went through old boxes of sports memorabilia. And I don't know exactly what he found, but I think about all the boxes that I have of baseball cards and my old baseball gloves, my old football gloves, right? Like I was a receiver when I was in high school. Old jerseys, like the idea of that, just even talking about that, like these images that flash to my mind actually starts to bring and breathe new life inside of me. And so where we left the conversation last night was, what do we do when we're in that dip of motivation, right? Like, do I forge ahead and be productive, or do I allow myself some time to feel the dip, to downshift a little bit? And for me, this is still an art that I have not yet perfected, but I can tell you I'm a lot better than I was a few years ago. When I would feel a downshift in my energy or a dip in motivation, it would immediately signal that something was wrong with me. I would beat myself up internally. I would resist it. I would fight it. Sometimes what I would do is I would overstimulate myself. So maybe I would drink twice as much coffee. Maybe I would eat more sugar to kind of like prop up my system. Sometimes I would double down into extra work just to avoid the feeling of the dip. And in many cases, that ended up causing me to spend those few days or however long that period of time was in the dip, feeling really tight and resentful. And that created other behaviors like, sexual compulsion and needing to watch more porn to let go of that. And there were a lot of like a pinball machine, like a lot of downstream effects of I did one thing to shift from this feeling of unease, and then it would send me to another darker place. And it would just be like hopping from one lily pad to another of pick my poison of pain. And now, when I experience the dip, through the practice of meditation and mindfulness, I've recognized that these feelings of these ebbs and flows of energy are simply the cycle of life, right? Like this dip is actually something that's like, okay, I've had a pretty good run for the past 4 weeks, and now I'm feeling like this downshift. I actually don't know what caused it. Doesn't seem like there's any one particular event that it was like, if this, then that. No, it just kind of happened on Saturday, and it stayed with me for a few days. So the first part of it was just like kind of recognizing, okay, I'm in this temporary period. This too shall pass. And the difference, the elevation from a few years ago to now is that I don't resist the dip the way that I did years ago. The dip is always inconvenient. It never comes at a time that I'm welcoming it. There's always like something that needs to be done. Or if the dip comes on a vacation, it's like, well, shit, I'm on vacation. Now I'm feeling the dip. That sucks. I'm not motivated. I just want to sit in my whatever. The dip is never convenient. So I had to actually get over that fact, recognizing that energy ebbs and flows, and that when the dip happens, instead of resisting it, to accept, okay, this is where I'm at, and then how do I organize my life in a way where I can take care of myself, where I don't let any of like the major plates that I'm spinning fall, but that I also don't ask myself to go at that 100% level that I'm constantly holding myself to from a standard perspective. And the difference there is that when I'm no longer resisting the dip, I don't suffer through it. That's a huge upgrade. When I was in the dip before and I resisted it, I was suffering every single day until I found my way out. Because I wanted to be different. I wanted to be over. And that's kind of like a microcosm for the coronavirus era. A lot of people are resisting that we're in a new place, that our freedoms are, not the way they used to be, that there's still fear and scarcity that we will have to navigate through for an extended period of time. For those of us who have accepted that this is where we're at, we are suffering far less than the unfortunate who are still fighting the reality of today. So the same thing happens with this dip is, okay, this is where I'm at. How do I take care of myself? And for me, the way that looked over these last few days was to simply take some of the pressure off of myself to create every single day. Some of the big projects that I wanted to start working on, maybe I postponed a few of them for a few days, or instead of doing 100%, I did 50%. I kept the ball moving, but after that, it was just okay, that's enough. I know that when my energy comes back, then that extra, whatever's left, I'll be able to get done in minutes versus if I try to do that now, it'll take me hours and the quality will probably be lower. So I've learned how to shuffle the deck. I've done what Michael Young has done, which is part of the dip for me this time was just the monotony of everyday life, waking up the same way. And even when I go outside, my runs are around the same few blocks. I feel like my life has shrunk, and I like creative stimulation. I like adventure. I like being on planes. I like going into new environments. And so some of that monotony I recognized was what was part of the demotivation. So I like to seek for buried treasures inside of my apartment. I mentioned this 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I did too pull out some old photo albums from college where I was 25 pounds heavier. I looked like shit. And I had a bowl haircut for some of that. It's just reprehensible shit, fellas. But it was fun to take a look at that and see my friends and the stupid outfits we used to wear. Like that kind of stuff brought novelty and newness. So I think the important thing that I want to leave you with is dips happen, right? The motivation, our energy ebbs and flows. It's not a one-way street. It is up and down. It is transient. It comes and goes. And the root of suffering comes from clinging, craving what we want. And when we don't have it, we suffer. And then being averse to situations that are not pleasing to us. Those two forms, craving and aversions, are the roots of suffering. And I learned that through my Vipassana meditation, the 10-day silent meditation that I went on. And so when I can experience something that's maybe undesirable for me, but then to accept that here's where it is, and then to adjust my mindset, my habits and behaviors accordingly, then the suffering starts to dissolve. New ideas come to me, and I have a path to stepping out of this in a healthy, powerful, and expedited way. Even though the intention is not to to cut this short, but it doesn't also need to be any longer than it needs to be either. And I've found that going about it this way has increasingly shortened the amount of time I spend in these energy dips. And for me, that feels really good. It feels like a sense of progress. So I hope that this conversation has been helpful for you, whether you're in a high place now, or maybe you're in a dip yourself now. Take this message with you for now, today, tomorrow, into the future. And if there's someone that you know who's in a dip right now who could hear something like this and benefit from it, feel free to forward it to them. Because one of the things that you've heard me bang on this week, fellas, is that a leader adapts first. A man who is living the greatest version of himself is also sharing this work with other men and getting them on the path, showing them that there's another way. So find someone, share this with them, and inspire them to find and live the great man within them.